another long story about Third Cliff. You probably know Billy Sexton. Well, his mother was a hard-working lady, and his father was hard-working. And Mrs. Sexton took care of Clarence Breyer's house, big estate up in the Cliff. She was a cook and did all the work and all that. Well, Mr. Breyer was a very successful insurance agent in Boston, so he decided to have, today you'd have a cookout. In those years, you'd have a lobster bake, and you'd bring people down. So we hired the Scituate Country Club. We had a caterer come in to do it, and they had golf for the boys and boating for the boys. And so they decided to have a menu and lobsters, baked stuff, and all that. So Mr. Breyer said, Mrs. Sexton, I'd like you to go over and just check on things, because you've been my cook for years, just to make sure everything is all right. So she went over, and she came back, and the party's going along pretty good, and she says, I'm not sure of the lobster salad, that big bowl of lobster salad. She says, it don't look too good to me, but it may be all right. Well, Mr. Breyer says, we just can't have anything happen. He says, what can we do? She says, well, I'll take a bowl of it home and give it to the dog. And we'll watch the dog, see? And, well, Mr. Breyer says, if anything happens to that dog, you call me immediately, see? He says, we don't want any catastrophe over here in the Scituate Country Club. So Mrs. Sexton walked down the cliff down the town way and came along 6 o'clock or so, and they'd served the dinner, and telephone rang at the country club. Mr. Breyer answered it. He says, Mr. Breyer, this is Mrs. Sexton. The dog died. He hung right up quickly, and he called the 4 doctors that were in town, come up with stomach pumps. There was Dr. Cleverly, Dr. Grovey, Dr. Handy, Dr. Alexander. And they worked, and they got all the stomachs pumped out and all that. So the next morning, Mrs. Sexton goes to work, and Mr. Breyer says, I was sorry to be so abrupt last night when I hung up so quickly on you. She says, but it was very nice of you to tell us that the dog died. She says, yeah, Fred Clapp come into his ice truck and ran him over.